Huawei is certainly a name that's been making the rounds in the media lately, and, thanks to a number of political reasons, not always for the best reasons. Regardless of politics, though, Huawei has improved itself substantially in the last year alone, and this year is delivering its best devices ever. That's good, too, because the price of the Mate 20 Pro in particular is among the highest of any device on the market. There is a reason for this, though. Huawei is throwing everything and the kitchen sink into the mix, as evidenced by our camera review, and the rest of the phone feels extremely similar in every regard. Like the P20, the Mate 20 and Mate 20 Pro are certainly similar devices, but the far less expensive Mate 20 makes some concessions in key areas. From the back, the design seems very similar, with a square camera module in the middle, curved edges on the left and right sides, and a brand new texture that's oh so fantastic. It's still glass, so it supports wireless charging, but we'll cover that in a bit. The unique point here isn't just the look, as not all color variants have this line pattern, but it's the feel. Just listen to it. Oh yeah, it's super satisfying just to sit and scratch it. It kind of reminds me of those hologram cards I used to get from a vending machine when I was a kid. I even found myself sitting in a chair scratching rhythms onto it more than once when I found myself a little bored. It also adds a layer of grip to the experience that regular glass doesn't have, but it's nothing like a soft touch back phone or anything, and of course, since not all colors have this, you may want to rely on that clear TPU case that comes with either phone from time to time. Flipping the phones over reveals two very different designs and configurations though, and I'm not sure how I feel about this. The Mate 20 is a flat LCD, while the Mate 20 Pro is a curved OLED. Aside from the typical improvements in quality that OLED panels bring, there's no inherent advantage to curving the screen when it comes to image quality, rather it's all in the look of the build itself. The Mate 20 actually sports a slightly larger display than the Mate 20 Pro, 6.53 inches on the Mate 20 versus 6.39 inches on the Mate 20 Pro. That also means the Mate 20 is slightly wider by 5mm and taller by a single millimeter, and the aspect ratios are even different too. The Mate 20 also features smaller bezels and comes with a pre-applied film-type screen protector, which is annoying for Mate 20 Pro customers, since curved displays are considerably more difficult to find a good protector for. Neither phone is one-handable, and the design of the teardrop notch on the Mate 20 is certainly preferable to the Mate 20 Pro's overly large notch, although both phones allow the notch to interfere over content, a problem that's much more prominent on the Mate 20 Pro. Surprisingly, I found that hiding the notch on the Mate 20 Pro worked rather well for the most part. It's the first time hiding the notch did not bother me, as most phones make me feel like hiding it takes away the color identity of apps, but for some reason, this one seemed to work. Maybe I'm just finally getting used to the notch nonsense. Who really knows? Huawei does utilize a nice set of curves when the notch is hidden, so it's possible that this plays a big role in making it feel a bit more natural. These curves are an overlay that sits atop most UI elements, and I say most for a reason. While the curves of the back bar that hides the notch align perfectly with the curves of the phone itself, notifications aren't curved at all and look rather goofy with their squared off corners right atop a portion of the curved edge. It's also a bit visually glitchy and just kind of looks a little messy. Inside the larger notch on the Mate 20 Pro is the addition of an IR camera and a dot projector used for 3D facial identification and subsequent unlocking. When the phone debuted, this face unlock method was pretty hit or miss, and plenty of times I had to wait quite a while for it to recognize me. A recent patch fixed all my issues with this though, and now the face unlock feature is instantaneous when I'm holding my phone normally. It even works well with hats and glasses, although if you grow a beard, you may need to redo the Face ID process. Using Face Unlock for payments is also going to be a hit or miss, as only Alipay really supports this kind of thing at this time, and I never had an app ask me to use my face to sign into it either, only my fingerprint. That's a bummer. The Mate 20 Pro utilizes an in-glass fingerprint scanner, while the Mate 20 has a more traditional rear-facing fingerprint scanner. The Mate 20's in-glass one is certainly better than phones we used with this tech just a few months ago, but it doesn't hold a candle to the speed and accuracy of the one on the Mate 20 in everyday use. It's great to see this tech maturing at such a rate, and as far as display quality is concerned, you'd never know there was a fingerprint scanner under that gorgeous OLED panel. Still on the subject of design comes the question of speakers. Looking closely at the phone, you'd never realize that Huawei put the speaker inside the USB Type-C port to hide it altogether, owing to a design philosophy that tries to remove as many ports as possible. The results are sort of what you would expect. Performance is definitely worse than I recall on the Mate 10, and most certainly worse than the P20 Pro when played side by side. The Mate 20 Pro does sound better than the Mate 20 though, as the Mate 20 only has a single bottom-firing speaker and no support for using Dolby Atmos to help virtualize sound placement for fuller sound. Atmos only helps so much on the Mate 20 Pro though, as the port can be easily covered up either by fingers or cables, and that's going to result in muffled audio. Then of course there's the oddity of having a 3.5mm audio jack on the cheaper Mate 20, but not on the significantly more expensive Mate 20 Pro. I mean, for €200 more, I wouldn't expect to lose an important port, yet that's what you're facing if you decide to go Pro over regular. Both models have an IR blaster up top though, and ship with smart remote software, so Ninja channel changing in the break room is a definite possibility with either phone. It's just a bit weird that we'd see the IR blaster stay, while the 3.5mm jack gets removed though. Most of the rest of the specs are the same, with both phones packing 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage in their base configurations, as well as the same Kirin 980 SoC. Both only support that odd new nano memory card standard though, so while it's got expandable storage support, it's not one of those cheap and fast micro SD cards you probably just picked up on sale. The vibration motors have seen a definite upgrade from the Mate 10 and the P20 lines, which is good because those were really terrible vibration motors. But these are not even in the same class as ones from companies like Samsung, LG, Sony, or Google. They still feel harsher and cheaper than those phones and don't quite exude the level of premium feeling I would expect from such an expensive set of devices. Huawei's new navigation gestures are interesting, but they're held back by an annoying multitasking interface that's a big step back from what we've seen on Huawei phones of recent. On the gesture side, you'll find some pretty common full-screen gestures, such as swipe up from the middle to go home, and swipe and hold to open recent apps. Swiping from the left and right sides of the screen is more akin to Samsung's method, which I personally prefer, but it's that swipe up and hold gesture that's so annoying to use. In fact, this gesture is so slow and unpredictable in its usage that I ended up going back to software navigation buttons altogether, as swiping up and holding will sometimes take several seconds before it realizes you're trying to open Overview, and even then sometimes it'll just end up going home instead. This situation gets even worse when using third-party launchers, as this Overview screen is now tied to the launcher in Android 9 Pie. And for whatever reason with the way Huawei built it, it is super buggy and doesn't even work half the time when you're using a third-party launcher. Hopefully this one gets patched soon. Possibly worse though is the design of Overview, which has unfortunately switched to that terrible horizontal carousel design of Android 9 Pie. We've been over this bad design ad nauseum, so I'm not going to spend too much time here, but it's worth noting because this is a terrible design for anyone that likes to multitask between more than 2 or 3 apps at most. The biggest problems are that it's slow to move between apps, difficult to see what's coming up next or even down the line, and there's no kinetic movement to the tiles, making it difficult to quickly click the tiles themselves. On the bright side with Huawei's design, you can at least see a second icon and name for the app to the right, while this isn't possible on the crappy stock Android design, and Huawei also has added a dedicated split screen button above each app's thumbnail that supports it. They even kept the quick split feature when holding down the overview buttons when software navigation buttons are enabled, which is a big plus that most other OEMs on Pi don't have. Lots of other positive changes exist though, like quick settings making a reappearance on the first swipe down, and additional volume control sliders over stock Pi. Then there's the upgrade to the desktop mode from last year's Mate 10, which can now be utilized via HDMI cable or, as a bonus, wirelessly. This means that you can have a fully wireless desktop-type interface with just your phone via any compatible Miracast display, which includes popular platforms like Samsung TVs or Roku-powered devices like TCL TVs. Battery life is absolutely killer on both of these devices, and I'd be comfortable with saying that most folks will get close to 2-day battery life out of either phone. Huawei ships the Mate 20 Pro with a 40-watt charger, meaning a full charge in just over half an hour, while the Mate 20 ships with a 22.5-watt charger. So while it's not nearly as fast, it's probably faster than most phones you've owned up to this point. The Mate 20 Pro also features one incredibly interesting new addition to its wireless charging repertoire: reverse wireless charging. The idea here is that any device that supports industry-standard wireless charging can be charged by the Mate 20 Pro, but the reality is that there's not enough voltage to actually charge another phone. Really, it's just designed for wireless headphones like those wireless earbuds Huawei makes. Which phone's the best one to get? Well, given the vastly different prices and some more subtle changes in the actual experience, the cheaper Mate 20 represents a higher overall value, as the Mate 20 Pro isn't just a simple spec boost for a bit more money, it's really a very different phone as a whole. The cheaper Mate 20's fingerprint scanner is undeniably better. It has a 3.5mm audio jack built in, and it has better speaker placement at the bottom. It's also got smaller bezels and barely any notch at all, while the Mate 20 Pro's notch is pretty obnoxious in size. There's no denying the display quality differences between the two though, and if you want the absolute best camera on the market for photography, the Mate 20 Pro is a no-brainer. The Mate 20 Pro also has faster, more secure facial recognition too, so if you're tired of using fingerprints to unlock, this is a good option. Still, if you're looking to get nearly identical software experience and to spend less cash, the Mate 20 is a solid recommendation in most regards. We hope you enjoyed that review and will subscribe to us for regularly updated content. Chat with us on your favorite social media network, and don't forget to check out our new look at AndroidHeadlines.com for 24/7 worldwide tech news coverage. Thanks for watching, and until next time.